Hello and welcome to our Eduro Learning video series, Let's Get Connected. In this series, we will hear from 10 connected teachers from all around the world as they share their top tips for getting connected, ways to connect your classroom and your students, to advice for ways to bring parents on board with a connected classroom, and so much more. My name is Chrissy Hallier and I'll be your host throughout this series. I had an amazing time with each awesome educator who is featured in this Let's Get Connected series, asking them to share with me and ultimately with you their most powerful connectedness moment. And there are some amazing stories that'll make you get goosebumps on your arms, stories that'll bring a smile to your face, but most of all, stories that will let you know that you too can experience those kind of powerful connectedness moments along with your students. So I hope that you really enjoy the conversation today as much as I did.
Oh my gosh, my most powerful connectedness moment. I've yet to randomly see someone in an airport. I would have assumed that would somehow be it, being an international educator, like, oh, I ran into Clint Hamada at the airport, but I assumed that would be it, but it's not. My most powerful connectedness teacher story is probably this most recent push that we've put in with the class Instagram. And I think what's been most amazing about it and what's kind of helped me realize the power of connectedness is that our school is a bit, not totally transient, but there's a population that comes and goes. And they often return back to the US or on to other locations. And so that was always something that was like, it was hard, right? It was a big loss. And what I started to have happen recently was once the classroom Instagram started to catch on and keep going, I had a lot more people who are my old students start to follow me. And they were still connected with their friends, but I found this like amazing experience that they wanted to be connected to the art studio and my classroom and see what was going on. I mean, they wanted to see the art that their friends were making. And I thought that was so incredible. And then we had parents joining in and they were wanting to know what was going on. And we had international educators from other schools who were joining in. I have people in Abu Dhabi who I've been chatting with. I said, here, check this out. And so there's this huge window into my classroom and also that window outward, right? Like I think it's so cool that people have an understanding of what we've been doing and how incredible my art students really are. But then there's also this other layer of the kids who go on and move into high school. And then they still stay connected. They still stay connected with me in my room. And I see them walk by and I just say hi, but at the same token, like they're still connected with what's going on in the studio. And it's been this really nice layer of like global connections, local connections, kids who are just in the hall and not in my class, but still, mentioned to me, oh, I saw on Instagram that you guys are doing this. And I think that's been the biggest, most interesting connection that I've been making lately. And it's just been a lot of fun to kind of show kids how wide-reaching that connectedness can be.
I feel like I've had the privilege of experiencing many powerful moments thanks to being a connected educator, and ranging from a Skype conversation with kindergartners where they're just like, wow, they feel this powerful connection to another group in a different country, to getting to know different educators. But I thought want to share this one story of being connected to an educator because it's just this great memory that I now have. And it's a story of how I connected to Lindsay Owen, who is an amazing educator and a maker, innovator. And we originally kind of ran into each other, right, on Twitter via the Maker Ed and DTK12 chat hashtags. And in 2014, we started to connect around this idea of innovation and innovation roles. And then ironically, we kind of at the same time started, without knowing it, both to enroll in this online course around coaching innovation. So then we suddenly were kind of running into each other in an online class. We're connecting on Twitter, and we started saying, well, it'd be great to do a conference together. So we put in this proposal and ended up presenting at South by Southeast EDU on the topic of scaling innovation. And when we first saw each other, we had been, talking online for quite a while, and we had never seen each other face to face. She lives in Seattle, I'm in Philadelphia, and it was just like, oh, it's you, and this really powerful moment of, oh my gosh, this is this person who I've connected and chatted with. We've become friends, and we've never even met each other. We kind of almost had forgotten that we'd never seen each other face to face. And we've gone on to continue to collaborate. We've co-taught actually a course together online now, and we still brainstorm and talk about projects together. And I just love that I can meet people across the country and the world who I can learn with and become friends with, and have these really exciting, powerful connections that don't even require face-to-face meetups. And that's all because of being a connected educator.
Oh, my favorite connectedness story. There's been so many moments when this idea of being connected, which I got to say, I've never really thought about it as just as this separate thing. And this is my connected story. This is just my story. This is just the story of me as an educator, and categorizing as being connected is not something I've ever really thought about. But I remember years ago when podcasting became a big thing, and I thought, I'll try listen to that. So I listened to some podcasts, and then of course I get curious and I want to know how do people make these. So I started to make a podcast. And the concept I came up with for this podcast was, maybe I should just talk to teachers. So I was literally using Skype to call in other teachers, and we'd record the conversations and publish it. It was pretty low tech. And in the process, I ended up meeting people like Chrissy and dozens and dozens of others of educators around the world, where we would sit and just talk about stuff. And it's really interesting because I consider a lot of those people now who, when I look at it and I go, a lot of them changed the face of education and have been changing the face of education and redefining what it means to teach in a digital world. And so many of those people now I just consider friends because of the connections we made back in those early days of when this was a new thing. So I think that's my favorite connected story, is this idea that, by starting something as simple and dumb as a podcast to talk to other teachers, because I wanted to learn how podcasts were made, it ended up expanding my entire world. I now get to work with teachers all over the world. I've traveled all over different parts of the world, and I can trace so many of the great things that have happened to me professionally and personally now back to a lot of the stuff that I did many years ago when I made that decision to get connected to people that were outside my physical space.
I think my connected teacher story, the one comes to mind was when I was involved in the Traveling Teapot Project. You may have heard of this, and it was just so cool. Even looking back, it still brings a smile to my face because it was just so powerful. The level of engagement of the students when they have a teapot wrapped in a box coming from, in this case, it was Singapore, was just incredible. It's cross-curricular as well. There's so many components to it, which also makes it very powerful to me. And we're talking about, social studies. We're talking about the language arts. We're talking about math and building and constructing. So a little bit of art in there as well. So we were communicating with a Singapore school. They had mailed the teapot. And the students then, of course, we learned about, where is Singapore on the map? And then, of course, we were invited to then mail this teapot somewhere else. So then there's a whole bunch of research involved in that, and Google Maps, and plotting our little point on that map. Where has it traveled, before us? Where are we going to send it next? That was really, really cool. And of course, then we have to blog about it, and we have to make a video about it, and then we share that with the world too. So it was just really cool.
For me, the moment that I guess sticks best for me as a connected educator was about 6 or 7 years ago, when a group of 6 of my students presented a keynote at a global conference from my classroom. They went through, prepared the presentation, Each of them had a different set of slides that they were working through. Sat there quivering in their boots in total silence as they hopped one to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, talking into a microphone without a lot of feedback, and not realizing that at the other side of the Tasman, because they were talking into a conference in Sydney, the audience was stunned into silence by how articulate this group of kids were. And I was getting to watch from the back of the classroom how they were speaking and how they grew in confidence as each of them got up to speak, and then also getting the feedback from the keynote from the people I knew in there. I think in many ways, while it would have been lovely to take them all over to Sydney and get them to talk, actually this was probably a better experience for them, and boy, they got a lot out of it.
One of the biggest moments, or my most powerful connected moments, I think about something that happened this year for my students. And I always started off the year like joking around with my students because they know that I love hockey. That I was like, sorry guys, like we're never going to have like a hockey team come visit us. I'm not one of those cool teachers that's just going to have their favorite team show up. Anyways, as that was just something that was always just an underlining joke in the classroom. So as the year progressed, I started being more active on Twitter and, you know, liking different things. And I happened to start following one of the local hockey associations in our area and liking some of their things. And I happened to tweet about, you know, coming to school and wearing my hockey skates in the classroom. And they, one of the accounts, you know, tweeted at me and were like talking to me about wearing my skates. Anyways, after a few months of back and forth, just kind of like liking things and making comments, I got a message from the association about like, oh, you should have your students come out to this event that was happening on the weekend. And I was like, I wish I could, but that's really not something I can orchestrate. And they're like, well, would you ever want us to come out and visit your class? And I'm sitting there thinking like, this is kind of cool. This is pretty interesting. And of course I was like, yes, let's do it. And we started messaging back and forth. We set up an opportunity for this person to come out and visit my class. And he brought all sorts of hockey gear, all sorts of jerseys. And the kids had this fabulous morning where they got to play around in hockey gear and jerseys and learn about the sport and kind of just experience what I love and what I've been sharing with them. And it was all because of Twitter. And it was one of those ones afterwards, kids were like, I thought you said no one would ever come out here because, you know, you're not a cool teacher, but like, look what we just had. And so I think that was probably one of the most powerful moments was we got this once in a lifetime opportunity for the kids all because of Twitter. And it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have been connecting and interacting with people on Twitter. So that's my most powerful moment of being a connected teacher.
Okay. So my most powerful connectedness moment, at the time I was teaching grade 1. And again, this is a few years back when I started to get onto Twitter. We kind of started blogging with the class, and the kids wanted to share something. So it was kind of student driven, and they were saying, you know, okay, we write stories and we share them with each other, but could we share them with somebody else, someone else in the community? And so I was thinking, okay, well, I've kind of got a little community together with a few teachers that I met online. I met on Twitter. Ben Sheridan was one of them, and Michelle Hebert was the other, and they were both in different parts of the world. So I had this idea of what about creating a book together, because I knew they were teaching grade 1s and kindergarten as well. So I asked them, and actually Ben, he'd had some experience doing that, so that was good. So there was the expert that sort of knew how to do it. We had some ideas. The kids were excited about it. We connected a few times personally, like through Twitter, and then we had I don't think Hangout was invented back then, but we had a Skype or something like that where we had to talk about it, and then we used different tools. We were all using iPads at the time, and so we used Book Creator, Dropbox, and iPads at that time to put this book together that we each wrote a little piece of it, and then we had the kids do the illustration, and then we put it all together. And then one of the most powerful things that we did was publish it to iTunes, so anyone in the world could download the books. We had grandparents and relatives from around the world getting this book that we created together, and it's a very powerful moment. And My daughter, who I was teaching in that class at the time, she still remembers that. And at that moment, I think I thought, wow, this is like, I mean, you could not do that when I was going to school, to have that type of collaboration. And there was a lot of, lessons that were going into creating the book as well. We were learning about the, writing a narrative and fiction and things like that. So it was just a good way to celebrate and to share all the work that we did and acknowledge all the work that we did collaboratively. And we had a little Skype party at the end. We introduced, and that was kind of the start of what we did and what we kept on doing, of doing different little projects and things with each other's classrooms.
Here in Saudi Arabia, I was teaching grade 8 and 9 language arts. And because we're a predominantly Muslim country, many of my students are Muslim. And I showed them a video one day that Nike was coming out with a new hijab to cover your hair that was a sports one. And a lot of the girls in my class struggle wearing a hijab because it comes off and there are pins. And so when they're playing basketball, they're usually adjusting and then bouncing the ball. So I proposed to them, let's go write a letter to Nike, a persuasive letter asking if we could have some samples of the hijabs to try and give them our teenage perspective. And the girls took me up on it, and 9 girls sat and wrote the most amazing persuasive letter ever to Nike. And through many, many different levels of people and connections, we got that letter to the Nike headquarters in Oregon. And Nike kind of fell in love with the girls in the story and sent us the most gorgeous hijabs in a very special commemorative box with a special card for them. And they even wound up writing an article in their Nike Design Channel magazine all about the girls. And that, to me, was the most amazing connecting piece that I've ever seen. And I think for the girls, too, in this small, small town in Saudi Arabia, they never in a million years thought that that would happen. So for them to actually have a tangible piece of that connecting is something that every one of us has said we will never, ever forget, ever.
Oh gosh, there's so many, it's hard. Did one on energy with Lisa Parisi's class in New York, and the number of connections we made during that project. First of all, we set up our classrooms so that we had groups of 4 or 5 students, but like 2 or 3 of those students would be in my class and 2 or 3 of those students would be in her class. So students in both of our classes would be in the same group, just like you'd set up in your own classroom, just that we looked at it as kind of one big classroom, that kind of thing. And then there were all these different pieces, and then they had to put together an example of what that energy was and another example of transforming that energy into something else. To do that, we'd set up video conferencing for each individual group over the course of days, and they'd get to meet and talk, because we found out that you can do stuff through a blog or even through a shared Google Doc, which was awesome. You could see each other writing, and in our classes in a different project had come up with the idea of picking colors so it was obvious in the doc which class and which group had put in which information, and even this information is on that topic, so we'll make that green. I mean, and Lisa and I didn't figure that out. And then at the end, they had to come up with a way to present their learning, and they could pick, a voice thread or blog posts or a video or some kind of artwork or whatever. Just, and then it goes from there. So what an involved project that was all about being connected.
My best, most favorite connected story is my very first connected story. When I was teaching out of a textbook to my 5th graders about the difference between the Southern Hemisphere and the Northern Hemisphere. And one of my students said, "Isn't it true that the toilet water turns in the opposite direction in the South?" And I said, "I don't know, but let's find out." And I went on Skype, and who was there but Chrissy Hellier herself? And she sent us a video showing the toilet water spinning, and then connected us with Alana King, who I had never heard of before. Alana was also teaching 5th grade. And we did a 3-week project because she was ending school in 3 weeks and going to summer. We were heading into the winter. And we did a project where the children asked questions about the different hemispheres. Does moss grow on the north side of the tree in the northern hemisphere? What does the sundial look like? Does the sun rise in the east and set in the west, or rise in the west and set in the east? All kinds of different questions. And we created a wiki that demonstrated all of their knowledge. And one of my favorite parts of the wiki was the class picture that we put on there, us in our snowsuits standing outside on the playground in the snow, and them in their swimsuits at the beach. And my students couldn't wait to start this project every day. They did so much research. They talked so much with each other. It was so much better than learning out of a textbook.
If you like this format, hearing from lots of different perspectives on a single topic, then please click on that like button below. Subscribe to our channel to get all of the videos in this series. Turn on the notifications to find out when we're live on YouTube and be the first to see the next installment in the Let's Get Connected series. Do you have any questions about having a connected classroom or being a connected teacher? Or would you like to see a specific series related to anything about education and technology? Leave us a comment below and let us know. If you'd like to see even more resources to help you in the classroom after you've watched this series, then head on over to our website and check out all of our free resources. We have more videos, blog posts, some online courses all about teaching and learning and coaching in the digital world.